Welcome back to Plague Scythe Studios. Today I'm teaming up with cynical asshole from Australia, Leon Todd, and we're going to be looking at the best of NAMM. But first...
All right, everyone, welcome to the Best of NAMM 2019 with myself and Mr. Leon Todd. If you're just joining us, I would highly recommend that you go watch the Worst of NAMM 2019. And we're going to shed some positivity on my channel, which is much needed after some of the stuff we've been talking about recently, with some fairly exciting product releases and announcements from this past NAMM 2019 show. So, I think you had this one on the list. This was the Suhr PT-15. Why don't you start us off with that?
Yeah, I should add as well, if you want to listen to us both be cynical assholes, go and check out the Worst of NAMM on my channel, where we just rip and contradict ourselves a whole bunch, because we're filthy hypocrites when it comes to gear, as all of you listening are as well. So welcome to the club. But
absolutely.
But yeah, this was a very cool product, the PT-15 IR. So essentially it's a mini 3-channel tube head with Suhr's reactive load built in and the ability to load your own IRs all in one box. That is like just a home run, I think, in the current market. Like, just they served up a big juicy ball, and John, Suhr, and Pete hit it out of the stadium, over the car park, and, you know, over the river next to the car park into the woods somewhere. Because for people who, you know, it sort of seems like this is just the thing. It's like not everybody wants to go and get like a load and an amp and an IR loader and an interface. This doesn't have an interface, I should say, but it's sort of like, yeah, it's small, it sounds really good as a tube head, and it's got all the extra stuff you would want in a pinch in one box.
Yeah, agreed. I think Suhr's quality reputation speaks for itself, but there's so many bands that I've seen live in the past couple of years that do this exact thing with a real tube head running through, you know, a 2-notes reactive load, and either going into like an Axe-Fx for the cab IR or just using the reactive load like the Torpedo Live to load it. So it makes total sense to me that, you know, you combine the two under one box, and well, it's got Pete Thorne's name on it, so it's probably going to be fairly trustworthy. So I'm very excited for the precedent that this sets, and I hope we see a lot more of that stuff going forward, because, I mean, as much as I love digital modelers, I do love a good, you know, traditional tube amp interface, and I think that's why stuff like the Kemper is so popular. But to be able to bring that whole amp and cab sound with you in, you know, a fairly small amp head is, I agree, definitely out of the park, into the next county. It's a home run for me.
Yeah, obviously it's quite expensive being Suhr, but you kind of get what you pay for with Suhr stuff. And the one thing did make me laugh. I see someone said it's kind of like a VHS DVD combo player, which is kind of like, I feel like we're at that moment in like the sort of like universe of guitar where digital modeling is so good now, and, you know, that's kind of your DVD thing, but not everyone wants to get one, and a lot of people still have all their old VHS tapes lying around that they want to use. So yeah, that's the only downside. I'm like more excited for this as you said, as like the precedent that it's setting, because lots of other people are going to do this, and hopefully it will motivate companies, rather than just put like something like the Mesa cab clone as your DI out, which, you know, people have had DI and speaker emulated outs since the early 90s in tube heads. Like, just go that little extra distance, put a proper reactive load in, put a simple little digital interface in there that lets you load IRs, and you'll cover all your bases that way, I think. And at the same thing, the Rev and 2-notes collaboration, Rev have also done a mini head with the 2-notes reactive load built in, which is, again, pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely, especially since it's in a freaking lunchbox size. I really hope that 2-Notes starts licensing their stuff out, because they're kind of at, you know, the top of the food chain as far as I'm concerned with cabinet emulation, and, you know, they do all kinds of crazy stuff with microphone modeling, room modeling, that kind of stuff. But to see an emulated output on say other brands later down the road, that'd be super cool. But the same deal with the Suhr amp. I think this sets a really good precedent to where you can take something that's still partially tube driven, for those that do like that sort of traditional amplifier feel and interface, and get something that can sound good no matter what venue you're in, and have headphone outs and all that kind of stuff for jamming silently. And I'm a big fan of the Rev sound. I'd love a Rev generator,
big time,
even the real amp, but especially the model on Axe FX would be super cool. So very excited about this one. I'm really curious to see what the price point is. As far as I know, that's not been announced yet, has it? All I've seen is like the YouTube video for it.
Yeah, I've only seen the YouTube video, and I mean, both of those companies do really cool stuff. I think Rev, they're like hitting that sweet spot where they're obviously like a smaller builder, but it's quite forward-thinking stuff. It's not boring, It's a reactive load in a tube head, It's one of those things that now just seems so obvious, but no one's done it until these two guys. So yeah, more power to them. I think it's it's going to hopefully chart the course for the next, say, decade of tube heads, where, you can go and buy an amp that you might want to, you move up to that sort of thing where it's like you need an amp for touring or gigging, and you've got the convenience of just going like, we're in a smaller venue, so I'm going to turn down and I'll just plug straight into the PA and happy days.
Agreed. And technologically, it's pretty damn impressive if you see the size of a, normal like 100-watt reactive load. I mean, like stuff like the captor is a significant portion of what that head alone is, in terms of space. So pretty cool, technologically speaking. And on the topic of more miniature heads, we have the Jerry Cantrell signature from Friedman, now in a miniature 20-watt version. That's good stuff. I mean, who doesn't like Alice's chains anyway, but Jerry's guitar tone is just ripping. And then, obviously, ever since he's been with Friedman, it's especially been very impressive, but to have something that's more affordable for most people is always good. And this is a similar thing, right? Doesn't this have a built-in load?
I'm just looking at the specs now. 20-watt mini head. It has a simple, clean, dirty channel with JBE switch, load, mic no more circuit for direct 20 watts. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Nice.
So they're obviously, make that like 3 amps, which let you do that. Obviously, you can't load IRs into it, but the only thing that would make me not really want one of these is what they're using for power tubes. If it's EL84s, that would really turn me off it. If it was 6v6s, or even if they're just running EL34s, that would be pretty cool, which seems to be sort of the go for lower watt heads. But I've never been a fan of EL84s in high gain smaller amps.
I agree.
And obviously the price point, because Friedman's, again, you get what you pay for with these kind of things. But yeah, that seems like a super cool little head. That's like, actually, again, this is one of these things where it's like, I'd never want to chuck the money down for the full size version, but something like this seems like it's pretty darn cool.
And it gets my hope up just a little bit of seeing a 20-watt brown eye in the future at some point.
Yeah, that would be killer.
The runts are cool. They sound great. The 20-watt definitely doesn't have the headroom and the big bottom end, but seeing more of their stuff in smaller packages would definitely be interesting. And then the last of our 20-watt miniature micro head extravaganza is actually what is probably the most interesting products from Marshall in the past decade in my books. We've got the 20-watt version of the 2203 JCM 800, the Silver Jubilee, and a classic Plexi. So that's pretty damn cool. These are all single channel amps that they pretty much mimic the originals in terms of controls and more or less sound. I think these things are running on 84s, if I remember correctly.
I thought I saw 34s, which is pretty interesting when I looked at the specs. But again, we can fact check that later. We don't want to get facts get in the way of a good thing. But I demoed the Origin 20 last year, and I just did a demo of the 50, and it's one of those things. Anytime I touch anything Marshall on my channel, the views and the analytics kind of go mental. So even like I'm just super keen to try one in general, because it's sort of like I saw the Origins and it's like, you know what? Yeah, the last cool thing Marshall did for me was maybe the Astoria series, and they were really expensive, but in terms of just their like general production, it's the Vintage Modern, and I picked one of those up really cheap, and it's a really cool amp. I also totally understand why people didn't like it, but yeah, like a Mini 2203, it's just, that's such a no-brainer for me. You know, how many people want that sound out of an amp without absolutely deafening themselves? That
right,
yeah, that's gonna sell like hotcakes. And they did the cool thing aesthetically. It's a small thing, but it's a cool thing with the vertical input.
Yes.
Which, you know, they made it look aesthetically like the really desirable ones. The Jubilee is actually, that's super cool. The mini head, that's really interesting. Something I would definitely want to check out, because you know, I obviously own quite a few Marshall amps, and I don't own a Jube, and they're a really unique kind of thing in the Marshall zoo, and obviously a mini 20-watt super lead plexi. So I guess my question with that is it's like, obviously there's got to be some stuff going on in the preamp section that would make it different from like a JTM style series, or maybe it doesn't have a tube rectifier or something.
Yeah, I'd imagine they're doing something of that sort. From the clips I've heard, it doesn't sound like there's any solid state bullshit going on though, like they did with the 900. So, I mean, it sounds like the real deal, but I guarantee you, like you said, they're making sacrifices in the power section, whether it be rectifier, transform, or something. And you are correct, they are EL34s, which makes it that much more impressive to me, and probably why they sounded so much more accurate than I'd planned, or that I expected them to be. Yeah, Jubilee is probably at the top of interesting, though the 2203 having the vertical inputs is so cool. And they have all 4 inputs on the 59.
They managed to cram awesome. The thing I really like the look of as well is the vertical 212 cabs, which I can't believe Marshall just haven't done these until now, because, yeah, that's super cool.
Totally agree. Vertical 212 just needs to take off already. I mean, you got like Jesus doing it. I think Orange might have had one at some point, but now, well, I know they have diagonal cabs, because one of my buddies gigged with one, but yeah, why aren't verticals a thing for miniature heads? Get on that, everyone.
It just always reminds me of the old ADA cabinets. I think they were one of the first companies in the 80s to do those vertical 212s, and they had them in that like terrible like carpet finish, but that's
oh yeah,
I would love one of those, but I doubt that's ever going to happen. But yeah, the vertical 212 is a winner as well. So yeah, I know like the Origin is a really, really divisive amp. Like people are either like, I love it, I went and bought one, you know, it's getting me that Marshall thing and it was cheap, whereas a whole bunch of other people were like, this shouldn't say Marshall on it, it sucks, it's the worst thing I've ever heard. So I think, you know, Marshall, just even from the reaction, like I reckon they're going to nail it with these amps. And, you know, if they sound 50% as good as the real things, people are going to eat them up.
Yeah, be a super cool studio tool, I think. Speaking of studio tools, and good for live, actually, Darkglass has unveiled not only a version 2 of the Microtubes 900 bass head, they have a head version of the Alpha Omega, which I'm very excited for. I love the sound of Darkglass products. They are among the most impressive non-tube, you know, types of tones for bass guitar, right up there with Sansamp for me. And I've used the plug-in version of the Darkglass pedals all the time. Love those sounds, and it really makes me want to pick up an Alpha Omega just to have the full palette of their tones at my disposal. And so I'm really glad they're putting them in the head form. I'm curious, what does Mr. Rafferty think of the Darkglass stuff? Has he tried any of it out?
I don't think he's tried one of them in the flesh, but we did tone match his Sansamp with the Axifex 3.
I did see that video. It sounded pretty sweet.
Yeah, and I actually used that tone match, like we were rehearsing the other night, and I basically, like we rehearse on ears now, which is super cool. So I can just run everything through the Axifex, and I basically just loaded that up and didn't touch it, and that was his bass sound for the rehearsals. So yeah, and I kind of showed him around. It's sort of like, you know, he just never has time to check out gear. You know, he's got quite a sizable family and work commitment and all that kind of stuff. So he's the guy that the first year we ever went on tour, we went to the States, he was like, cool, I'm buying a Sans amp and I'm not taking an amp. And I remember going like, dude, you're crazy. And just, it didn't take me long to come around and be like, no, you were right. That's such a good idea. So, and now for gigs, I mean, we take drums, Sans amp, I take my AX8 and it's great. And yeah, I same kind of thing. Like I'd just love to get a B7K or an Alpha Omega and just to have it in the toolkit for bass stuff. The V1 of the microtubes is amazing. Total name drop as well. Obviously the Alpha Omegas developed with John from Carnival, who are a very well respected band from Perth, and I do some gigs in a cover band that John also plays in, which he probably doesn't want the world to know about. So, but yeah, he's using the microtubes V1 and his Alpha Omega pedal, and man, that guy just has a sound that's just so unmistakable. He's an incredible bass player, but imagine what it sounds like to have that bass sound playing, you know, Sexy Back by Justin Timberlake, and it's pretty freaking amazing. So yeah, it's it's the fact that they've like baked that into a head that size is such a no-brainer. You know, I'm sure he'll appreciate that as well, because he's got a pretty big pedal board, and I know they're doing some touring at the moment as well, which is pretty exciting, and hopefully they'll release some new music soon as well. But yeah, I'd really, those heads look so good, and the demo for it was so good as well. I watched it this morning, and it's like, man, whoever's doing Darkglass's like social media stuff, give that guy a raise, because it's so good. You know, Darkglass are on point. That's the only thing I can say.
When you have a guitar player like me who never plays bass except to record, saying, holy shit, I gotta buy one of these heads, you've done a good job. That's all I'm gonna say.
Me too, because the only time I ever play bass is recording demos. I guess it's just going to be good. Darkglass are just good. They're one of those companies. They're kind of like Fractal Audio. They're kind of like you know, a few other brands out there who they just put something out and you know it's not going to be shit.
Exactly.
And if you think it's shit, you're wrong and you don't understand how it works.
And unsubscribe right now.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want your kind. Speaking of not shit, Ibanez is actually on my not shit list this year. At least the guitars, they were on our shit list on the worst of. Again, go check that video out after you watch this one, or before. And the reason I put them on this list is I have a semi-popular video in which I bitch about my least favorite, most overused features on 7 and 8 string guitars. And
that's such a good vid.
I appreciate that. That dislike ratio is pretty good too. But it's like, I think they've listened to, not necessarily to me, but in terms of people, you know, speaking with their wallets, because they've actually made some decent improvements. So to pull it up here, one of the main things I complained about beforehand, well, I'll get out of the way, a couple things they're not ever going to fix. I'm tired of seeing the same Super Strat designs over and over, but who isn't? That's Ibanez's thing, whatever. If you don't want that, don't buy an Ibanez. It's pretty simple.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is I'd like to see more neck options on the market in general. Bolt-ons are great for extended range guitars. I prefer neck throughs and set necks. Again, that's Ibanez's thing, is bolt-ons. So just skip them if you don't want a bolt-on. But everything else, I complained about bridge options. We've got all sorts of new bridge options, both fixed and tremolo. We've got fan fret stuff. I was so sick of seeing EMGs on literally every guitar. We have Fishmans now. We've got some.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Their own proprietary. Yeah, and being a Fishman Fluence owner, you need a set. So everyone out there needs a set of something. They are ridiculous pickups. And we got those. We got some passives. We've got some new inlays. I bitched incessantly about putting regular white freaking dot inlays on extended range guitars. I have no idea who thinks that looks good. What I do like on these is their offset, and that I'm cool with. The guitar that's being wrapped up right now for me is actually got like offset blocks on it. So overall, aesthetically, I think these things look pretty good.
Yeah, the only thing that's a total abortion is the Alt-Star acoustic. Acoustic guitars with that Ibanez Super Strat headstock do not need to exist. The thing that I actually really like the look of are the RG5 220s. Like, they're understated enough while still, they still look like an Ibanez. Yeah, that's pretty cool. The Fishman thing, I think, is awesome. That's called having your finger on the pulse and seeing what everyone's using and just including it as stock, so that they don't buy your guitar, immediately rip the pickups out and have to spend another couple of $100. It's just there.
Yep.
And even the basses, like, I'm not a massive fan of like that particular bass shape, but the specs are really good. Surprisingly, the like traditional looking one with the sort of like little perloid pickguard looks pretty tasty. So yeah, that's I was really impressed that they did the AZ series, last year or the year before, and having played some of those, they're really good guitars. And yeah, hopefully these play as good as they look. I imagine they will.
Yeah, I'd say they will. And, between us, I don't think anyone's complaining that Ibanez's ever sound bad or really ever play bad. Their quality control's always, especially in the past decade, has been phenomenal. But I'm glad to see more options. More is always more. And these actually look like they belong in this decade, unlike a lot of their stuff did 5 years ago. So kudos there. I hope.
Yeah, about time.
Yeah, I hope more of the ERG market, especially, but any of the modern players actually follow some of these trends, so people don't have to look for custom options and stuff. Because not everyone wants to do that. That is an option, but it is a pain in the ass for a lot of people. So it's easier to run to your local music store and buy something off the shelf. So good job there, Ibanez.
Exactly.
Another Japanese company that needs huge praise is Boss. Holy shit. This expander Waza load box thing, I'm blown away. I don't even know where to begin with this.
Yeah, like, I didn't think it was going to be that good or have that many features. I'm sure it'll be... I imagine they're trying to make it about as expensive as the Universal Audio Aux, which is one of the... Like, if we did this, like, worst of NAMM video last year, that would have been on my best of and my worst of, because such a cool product and such a cool idea, but can't load your own IRs. The software development's been super slow. Boss just seem like they've thrown down the gauntlet with this thing. Like, it's got all the best features of something like the, Fryette Power Station, and it's got IR loading, and it's got effects. Just take my money.
Pretty much. And this is one of those products where, to quote the guys at Anderton's, the more features they rattle off, it's like, I didn't even think of that, but now I can't live without it. One of the super cool things, all the effects and stuff, you can pretty much trust Boss on the reverbs and all their digital stuff. They always sound good, but they've got different reactive loads for every speaker sim, which kind of blew my fucking mind when I first heard that. Because, it makes sense. Every, type of speaker setup's going to have a different load associated with it. But to be able to have, like, the feel of a 4x12 UK, it's kind of like a similar thing to what your Fractal load box does, right? It's got like a UK US switch.
Yeah, which is that's basically the reason I kept that and sold my Captor. Was it's like, yeah, all right, cool. If I'm loading down, if I'm doing clean stuff, I want that low resonant frequency to be lower and more Fendery. And if I'm doing dirty stuff, I want the UK voicing with a higher low res frequency, which is so much of a big sound. Like, that's such a big part of the way a cabinet sounds. You can chuck the same speaker in a different cab, and because of the physical dimensions of the cabinet, it's going to have different resonant frequencies. And yeah, as you said, like, I was sort of watching the video and I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then they said that and I was like, what? Like, no way. It's that's the next step. It's like you load up a greenback IR and you've got the resonant frequency of a greenback cab. It's going to really, really bring it into line in terms of the big thing people complain about with reactive loads or digital modeling is the feel, and that's a big part of the feel.
Absolutely. So you can pretty much have your cake and fuck it too in this instance. But you've got I mean, what blew my mind is this is also, so it's a load box that you can feed to, you know, a speaker, but it's also a power amp. And the thing that really, like, I was like, I can't believe no one's thought of this before, but now it's so obvious, is you can plug the speaker output of, say, a lower watt 15, like a 15 watt studio amp into the speaker input of this thing, and then it has a power amp speaker out to where you can then boost your low watt amp to like a 150 watt amp. That's bonkers. Whoever designed that definitely needs a raise.
I think to be fair, I know the Freyet power station did a similar thing. It's got like a tube power section. I think.
Did it?
Which is
I didn't
super
realize
cool.
that you could plug speaker out into that. That's cool.
Yeah, I think that's how it works. Don't quote me on it though. Again, that's for fact check. But yeah, man, this thing, for me, this is best in show. This is the product that most, just in terms of features, in terms of like what modern guitar players need, knocks it out of the park. I know a while ago, before Fractal came out with the X-Load, they were sort of saying that they've got two products. One is just a reactive load, and another is a reactive load with IR loading and effects. So again, it also kind of sets a precedent. For me, it's like, okay, if Boss are coming out with this, you know it's going to be pretty good, but what happens if it, like, you know, lights a fire under Fractal Audio's ass, and then they go, you know what, we need to jump in on this, and we're going to put our reactive load with a 4-way switch and ultra res cabs and all their reverbs and delays and effects, which are just in like another universe. That would be, I would buy that without even thinking about it, just because I know it's going to be so good. Even though I've already got the load box and I've already got the Axe effects, it's like one less cable to connect. Is beautiful.
Right.
And if they don't want to do it, I'll probably get the Boss one, because it, as you said, it just looks incredible.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on best in show in terms of a finished product that was shown. It's very impressive stuff. The one critique I would have for them is their, I don't know what your experience was. Did you play through the Boss GT 1000 at any point?
I haven't. It's high up on the list of things I want to get around to trying out, though.
Okay. The one thing that seems to carry over from that product is their software doesn't look all that amazing. It works, but the UI is pretty basic and maybe hard to navigate. But, you know, you can update that stuff. So as long as the hardware is there, that's the main thing I'm concerned about. And then lastly, at least the last main topic that I'm super excited to see is the Mooer GE 300 prototype was shown off, and with some pretty impressive results, I think. You've played with the GE 200 a lot, so I think you have more experience than me when it comes to the all-in-one units from Mooer. Yeah,
well, a bit. I borrowed one for a couple of days and made a demo, and it sounds really, really good. The UI is, the UI was better than like the amplifier, which is another really good sounding unit at that kind of price point. But it felt cheap. Like, that's the only way. You couldn't take it on the road with you. And looking at the GE 300, it's sort of like, it looks sturdier. I really hope they're the like touch sensitive foot switches like on the Helix, because if they've done that, man,
that'd be
my
great.
God, yeah. For like having and like I'm going to do a video with this at some point in the next 2 weeks. I'm kind of tossing up whether I want to do it after I hopefully try the GT 1000 at some point. Just sort of like, you know, a sort of roundup of the big boy modelers and the Mooer and stuff like that. And for what I like just let's remove the Fractal from consideration, because I obviously own one, and you know, you own one as well, and everyone knows that sounds great. Everyone knows the Kemper sounds really, really good. They're the two that sort of sit at the top of the food chain, depending on what you like. And then you've got the Helix, which, like, for me, the amp modeling still isn't quite there. The effects in it are awesome, and the UI is incredible and pretty inspiring to use. But I actually prefer the way the amp sims sound in the amplifier, which the UI is super basic. So yeah, the Mooer was like kind of in between there, where I actually kind of like the amp sims a little bit better than the Line 6 stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, which is, hey, you know, again, if you disagree with me, fight me. But their Friedman sim, man, was. And having said that, the Helix is amazing. You know, it all sounds really good. But just for what I like it had something going on there that felt really, really good and really easy to use. But like the GE200, like I just couldn't update the firmware. I was stuck in this loop where it's like I downloaded the editor and it was like, you need new firmware, but in order to load the firmware, you need the editor. And yeah, it was just a rage quit after about 30 minutes of that. So, and that's because I'm an idiot. Like I couldn't figure it out. But yeah, the GE300 looks pretty amazing. And I'm really curious to know what the price point's going to be.
Same. Part of me wants to guess 750. They'd be smart to be that or lower. And being an owner of the Mooer Ocean machine, if it's built like that, which I think it should be, considering that's kind of in their higher end, product stack, I think it will be roadworthy compared to the GE200, which I agree does not look built up for the task at all. But someone actually did a pixel by pixel comparison, and they were able to get the scale figured out.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
And apparently the GE300 is almost identical in terms of depth and length and stuff to the AX8. So it wouldn't be a bad backup option.
Oh wow,
if you're,
that's cool.
Wanting something that's a bit cheaper. So definitely looking forward to that. And I have to agree with you. The amp modeling on Mooer stuff is really impressive, especially since they'll be able to fit, what did they say, like 108 digital amp models. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I'm seeing here as well, tri-voice polyphonic synth module with waveform pitch filters, arpeggiators. That's pretty cool for like a creative sort of thing as well. And what's the other thing? And it's an interface, USB audio. Like for something cheap, hopefully, which it should be, then this will hopefully fill in that gap in the market. Like it's just screaming out for it. Like super low price and really cool features that they have, like it's not an original idea. You can look at it and see that they've just like cannibalized other people's ideas. But man, if it's cheap and it sounds good, what more do you want? And
like I said, the last video we filmed, I don't care if it's entirely original. Does it do the thing it's going to do well? Does it bring it either higher value or lower cost or more stuff? And I think this will deliver. So hopefully, if it's anything like their last products, it will do that. So looking forward to getting my hands on that.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing it too.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely from you, because everyone else tends to not show them to their fullest potential, but that's a topic for another video. For our last semi-positive topic, and this is more of sarcasm than anything, Jimmy Page is getting a couple new signatures, both from an amp and guitar point of view. I be honest, I could give a shit less about either of them. The main thing I'm happy here is that now we'll have at least, hopefully, a new generation of guitarists that realize Page's tones weren't from a Les Paul and a Marshall half stack. I don't know if you're a big Zeppelin fan. I can't say I am, but I like a lot of Jimmy's tones. But yeah, it's a telly, folks. It's a telly.
Yeah, when I found that out, I remember they put out that double DVD a while ago. That was sort of like one of the first really great music DVDs, and I got a copy of it, and I was watching, like, there's footage of them in the bonus stuff, like playing on French TV in 68 or 69, and he's playing a telly, and I'm going, what?
Yeah.
Like, since when? And then going back and listening and going like, yeah, that's the thing, and then reading about it, and it's a small Supro amp and a Telecaster and a room mic, and yeah, I mean, I'm a ginormo Zeppelin fan, not sort of like whole lot of love Zeppelin. Like my favorite Led Zeppelin stuff is Houses of the Holy onwards. I think that's my favorite album that they did anyway, which might be heresy in some parts, but yeah, he was just a guy that, like, all his tones are actually like ganky, kind of on their own terrible, what we would consider not nice guitar tones, but he's just such a great arranger and writer and producer. And if you want to listen to like how to actually dial in a guitar sound that's going to work and have character, he's the best. I think that's the thing I like about Jimmy Page, is like, it's sort of like, you know, I'm doing this thing which sounds so monolithic, but I'm using a telly and a tiny amp, and I'm using my studio know-how to make it sound big. So, I mean, I doubt anyone's actually going to be able to afford this amp or this guitar. So go and get like a Squier Classic Vibe telly and, you know, like a Boss Katana and an SM57 and a cheap interface, and just go about making music and learning how to mic things.
Yeah, totally agree. And this whole product, or products as it were, is more of a good thing in terms of awareness, I think, because I kind of have the same affection for Tony Iommi's guitar tones, because it's again one of those things where if you listen to the isolated tracks, they sound like fucking ass.
Yeah.
But they sound cool. Like the Sabotage guitar tone is one that I can get close, but it is so elusive. It is so hard to dial in. But when you hear like Hole in the Sky or Thrill of It All, it's just like
that song.
So yeah, you don't get that much more.
It's funny because, you know, like that, like, I feel like Volume 4 Sabbath or Sabotage Sabbath has become a whole genre of music. Like every doom band ever now, you know, it's just like, yep, I'm playing an SG in drop C sharp, and I've got like a Maestro fuzz, and we just doom out, and, you know, they all just sound like Black Sabbath Volume 4 or Sabotage, and they kind of get close, but yeah, that's, maybe they need to do more cocaine or something, and that's sort of the trick.
Yeah, get more
or,
syphilis,
you know, sleep with more.
You'll be able to get that treble boosted sound.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. I think, you know, Jimmy Page is like he's done very well to preserve. He's like one of the few like guitar demigods almost, or like, you know, he's a proper guitar god. You know, he only like shows up when needed and then disappears to his mansion. Yeah, it's that was pretty surprising. It's like, oh, Jimmy Page is doing a thing with Fender and, you know, this Sundragon amp, and here's the stuff that I used back in the day, and yeah, go and do it, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I would love to see like one of the best Fenders, if not the best Fender I've ever played, is a Jeff Beck Strat. So it'd be cool to see, you know, I know he's got like a signature model, but it'd be cool to see like if they sort of follow this, and it's like, you know, they're gonna do a Clapton, like, you know, 70s. Oh, they kind of have, haven't they? They've done like the Blackie and custom shop stuff, and, you know, Jeff Beck, you know, the whole, have they reissued that like Telegib thing, the Seymour Duncan, you know, it's a telly with two humbuckers. I'm gonna look that up right now and see if that happened, because I remember the story, and I remember seeing videos with Seymour Duncan. Maybe not, like that would make a lot of sense. Like, they couldn't call it the Telegib, but yeah, you know, call it the blow by blow Telecaster or something ridiculous like that, because that's another, like, for me, iconic guitar album. And yeah, telly with humbuckers, not a Les Paul like the cover says. And yeah, that kind of tonal awareness, I think, is a good thing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to see this carried over with many more artists, like you said, for many more brands. But I think that'll about do it for the our best picks of NAMM 2019.
Fantastic.
Thank you for joining me, Leon. Really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun, as always. If you are not subscribed to...
Oh, it's been great, man.
Leon Todd, you're a crazy man to begin with, but go drop him a sub. Go check out the worst of NAMM 2019 that we did earlier, probably a couple days prior to this, and we will see you, I guess, next year. Maybe we can start making this a tradition. That'll be cool.
That'd be awesome. Maybe we'll actually both be there next year.
That's the hope. Fingers crossed, not promising anyone, but fingers crossed you might see me. So, you know, knock on the closest thing to wood I have. But that'll about do it. So thanks for watching. And if you got any comments and, you know, garbage you want to throw our way about how stupid we are because we think one thing's cool and your favorite little toy wasn't on here, then feel free to do so, and I'll ignore it, and we'll see you next video. Thanks. Bye.